Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khair for joining us, and thank you again for waiting. Inshallah ta'ala, we're about to start. Just to be clear about how this works, inshallah ta'ala, it's like podcast style. They're going to be having a conversation between each other. And as we go through, any questions that you have, write them down. And inshallah ta'ala, after Salatul Isha or around that time, you can raise your hands and you can have your questions. Let's do our best not to interrupt during the conversation, inshallah. We're going to ask them to ignore you guys. So again, please focus, give them your utmost attention. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Adam. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So, I want to laugh. Obviously, I won't. Before we talk about the main topic for tonight, I wanted to ask a couple of questions to Imam. When we started the topic for this month, we titled it, Is Mamdani a Kafir? And what was supposed to kind of spark and reflect conversation that was happening online amongst, the youth and the younger crowd on Instagram, it ended up turning into this huge debate, kind of outrage and hurt feelings and all of that online. And before we actually talk about the bulk of the topic, I wanted to ask you, Imam, what happened? What do you think happened?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Jazakallah khair to the youth team and Sister Rouge for this question. I gotta say it's been a really tough week for our team, and for no good reason, if I'm being honest. But here we are, and we're gonna do the right thing anyway. To answer your question, there was this very huge controversy on social media that came in the aftermath of posting this particular title, and as we've said before, the title was not even meant to be provocative. It was meant to be reflective, rather, of what the youth are actually talking about, what they're asking, including a lot of adults, by the way, who were raised in extremely conservative masajid, and they were taught that the Shias are not our brothers and sisters, that they are not Muslim in the first place, and that was very hurtful rhetoric that the Imams here at Tarbiyah have been hearing the last few weeks. So it needed to be stopped, and so we took that question and we literally slapped it on the flyer, and we said this is what we're going to be addressing. It wasn't meant to produce any type of reaction. It's not even clickbait. Instagram doesn't allow you to click on anything. I think people's behavior on social media is very different from the way they behave in the real world, right? If you and I are having a disagreement, we're going to maintain some cordial interaction. But when you are faceless and you are hiding, behind your screen, you're able to say anything and everything. And I think social media brings the beast in everyone. It brings the monster in everyone, the extreme form of behavior with everything, the most hyperbolic reaction, the most hyperbolic action, and the most hyperbolic reaction. And I have to say that I was quite disappointed at the reactions that I've seen from some of our Tarbiyah youth. Allowing themselves to stoop to that level was not right, and I have to say it out loud, that we need to work on ourselves as well. If we don't accept this behavior from others, then we should not allow ourselves to engage in this behavior.
I mean, a lot of what we saw, a lot of the comments, a lot of the engagement was from people who were not even from our community. The post usually, our Heartsense, mashallah, always gets such a large crowd. We have about maybe 40 people, 40 youth here today. And this is pretty average. And even when the social media post goes up, it gets maybe like 30, 40, maybe 50 likes. But because a few individuals shared it, it ended up, getting engagement from people not just across the U.S. but even from across the world.
Right.
And there's people who are not part of the Tarbiyah community, people who have no idea what we strive to accomplish here in the masjid. They, they don't come to our events, they don't hear the imams, they don't hear the common, vision that we have as a Tarbiyah Institute. And so they just kind of felt like they had a place. And I wanted to ask you about that actually, because I think this is a common disease on social media.
Well, there's two categories of people here involved, right? There is the group of people that actually knew our intentions. And then there's the group of people that did not know our intentions,
Right.
which was probably the larger percentage.
Right.
If you're from the Sacramento area, you know where I stand, and you know where Tarbiyah stands, and you've known that for the last couple of decades. If Sister Layla here, who was someone I've known for 10 years, if she's maintained this track record of a particular pattern, and then one day she deviated from her pattern, what am I gonna think? That she's now a completely different human being? Or am I gonna pause and ask, well, Sister Layla would not do this for no reason. She must have wisdom behind it, and I need to trust this person because I've always trusted her.
Right.
I think part of the disappointment is that we were not afforded that same that same license. We were not afforded that same space. I know these guys. Maybe the title didn't sit well with me, but I know who they are. Let this play out, and I'll attend the event and see. And then maybe I will advise guys in the future, moving forward, let's not get too creative, right? Let's not get too creative with the titles, and let's keep it simple and straightforward. As for those who did not know our intentions, the disease of social media is very obvious. You know, it's the like the Prophet ﷺ says, كفى بالمرء إثما أن يحدث بكل ما سمع. It's worse enough of a sin for someone to keep repeating everything they hear and share it with people. Like by default, whatever we hear, we're supposed to keep it to ourselves unless there is a reason why it needs to be shared. But what social media has done, unfortunately, that it created a platform where everyone just goes and slaps a comment and leaves with full impunity. Like, you know, there was a particular person from the Bay Area. I'm not on Instagram, by the way. I mean, okay, I have an Instagram account, but I almost never check Instagram. I don't log on Instagram. So everyone is I keep tagging you on Instagram. I was like, what does that mean? But the brothers told me there's this guy who from the Bay Area who keeps shooting the absolute most vile of comments. We ended up having to delete those comments.
Yeah, I think we had to delete the comments. Yeah.
Like, why? Like, you're defending a cause that you feel is just and clean and good. Why do you have to use foul language and attack people's honor and dignity? Like, for me, that's, you know, that doesn't make any sense. And also, some of our own, you know, our own youth who have responded using maybe not foul language, but a foul approach, I think that degraded to the same level. And it really is a teachable moment for all of us to kind of be mindful. Sister Uruj, this right here is how spirituality is done.
Right.
It's not on TikTok. It's not. How many times have I said this? I've said this repeatedly. You want to learn the deen, stay off social media. Come to the brick and mortar, sit with humility on the carpet, surrender yourself to your spiritual teachers, and it's a process that takes years of hard work and effort and sacrifice and learning. And then after 10 years of effort, you may or may not make it.
I wanted to go actually back to the point that you talked about, you know, a couple of our youth, and honestly, I felt a lot of pride when I saw that our youth were actually engaging, just because, you know, it shows that they feel that same passion. But I think social media now is kind of seen as the modern day qalam. You know, when we learned about the usage of language, the usage of conversation and dialogue, when we're in person, it's very obvious. You know, there's a certain etiquette, there's a certain adab on how to discuss, how to talk, how to disagree. But I think that something changes with social media. For some reason, that lack of adab is more present. Can you talk about maybe what are the adab of social media? How do we learn how to engage? How do we learn how to discuss and have conversation?
The adab of commenting on social media is not removed from adab of conversations in general, right? Social media is an extension of our social conversations, or at least it should be, okay? And so, number one, I have to verify my intention. Why am I engaged in this behavior? Why am I engaged in this conversation? Am I trying to reach the truth, or am I just arguing? Number two, the avoidance of argumentation. You know, the Prophet ﷺ warns against argumentative behavior in general. How do you know that you're being argumentative? If your ego gets hurt when someone disagrees with you, and then you start commenting on every comment and every response to every comment, and even the tiny little sub-comments. And then each comment has like a thread of 50 other comments underneath. If you find yourself feeling the compulsion to respond to every sub-comment, then this is your ego speaking. It's not your true desire to reach the truth. Number 3, keeping it cordial. Not using foul language, using factual statements. And quite honestly, my approach has always been go in, say what I need to say, and then leave. Don't wait for responses. Don't wait for comments. Don't feed your ego with, oh, I got 50 likes to my comment. People really support what I said. This is not how you gauge it. You ask yourself, if the Prophet ﷺ was on this thread, will I be able to say those things? Will I be able to truly say those things? So, at least it's just some of the etiquettes of it.
I mean, there's obviously, when you read a comment, or as I was going through the comments and the engagement, I was noticing there was a lot of back and forth. Some of it was petty, some of it was, outright vile, but then there was a lot of sarcasm. And I wanted you to just maybe briefly touch on sarcasm and the usage of sarcasm. It's a lot easier, obviously, to notice it when you're talking in person, but online it's a little bit harder. But can you just talk about the permissibility of using sarcasm? I feel like that's something that maybe should be reiterated.
So, I can be sarcastic too, right? But I'm only sarcastic with friends. I'm sarcastic with family, people who know me extremely well, who know I'm just joking around. I find comic relief in sarcasm, okay? I take it a little bit too far sometimes, I apologize. But I think when we are sarcastic with strangers, then we are outright mocking them. This is what the Quran says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, la yaskhar qawmun min qawm. O you who believe, people are not supposed to be mocking other people. And sarcasm is a form of mockery. You're making fun of people, and we're not allowed to do that. But if with my wife we're joking around that I'm being sarcastic with her, we're being humorous with one another. Her sarcasm is even more biting than mine. It's fine. We slash each other. That's okay. But with strangers, I actually think that extensive sarcasm borders on the haram, and it needs to be avoided.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like a lot of this last week has taught many of us the work that needs to get done. I think, yes, it's obvious that there's a disease out there with social media, but I think as the caretakers of the community, I think we have a lot of work cut out for us. And I'm hoping that with conversations such as these, with the youth coming to the masjid and actually attending the physical location and having these conversations and dialogues in person, that it will allow us to now bring forth this new group, this new generation of leaders who will then be able to be the best model of Muslim American citizens, inshallah. So, shall we move on to the topic of today?
Please.
Okay, so the topic for today was actually a cause of celebration for the Muslim community. I mean, when Mamdani got elected, when he won the election, it was this huge celebration. But unfortunately, that celebration got tainted a little bit when the conversation of him being Shia and what that means, and oh my God, is he a kafir? Is he Muslim? All of that kind of came about, and it just diluted the celebration, the happiness, this win for us Muslims. So can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, people have used the words takfir a lot. They've used it loosely. They've used it for Shia. They've used it for other sects of Islam. Can you just talk about what it is and why it's used, and is it okay?
So let me go ahead and state for the record, okay? Zohran Mamdani is Muslim.
Can you say that 3 times just to make it official?
That'll be a YouTube short.
Put that on repeat. Yeah, so if someone says La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, that person is Muslim in my book. All right. So what is takfir? Takfir is when you excommunicate someone by saying that person is removed from the faith. This is a practice, unfortunately, that has become pervasive in the last couple of decades or so, especially with the rise of social media, with the rise of what I call truncated knowledge. People just watch a 1-minute video and somehow they think they've become an expert on a topic, and they start issuing statements and I ask these people, okay, I watched at least 150 videos, 150 1-minute videos on the subject. So how many books did you read about it? How many scholars did you study with? Never, right? And so, as a matter of default, we're not supposed to put takfir on others. Why? Because the hadith says that if we put takfir on someone, then one of us will have to be kafir, right? أيما رجل قال لأخيه أنت كافر فقد باء بها أحدهما. So if you accuse someone of kufr, you better make sure that the other person is kafir. Like if I said, for example, I don't know, if I select a public figure and I said that this person is kafir, right?
Trump, for instance.
Oh, don't get us in trouble, sister. Somebody else. Like, select. What's the most hated figure for you guys? Netanyahu. Okay, very good. That's a good example. All right. So if I said Netanyahu is kafir, can I put takfir on Netanyahu? Hopefully, because I am 100% sure that he's kafir. Like, and that therefore the accusation is not going to come back to me. But if I put takfir on someone who might be Muslim, if it actually in their heart turns out that that person is Muslim, then it's almost like I'm accusing myself of kufr, and that is
Wait,
very
so
dangerous.
what does that mean? Does that mean that anybody can be Muslim as long as you don't know that they aren't Muslim? Like, what is the
Like I
conditions?
said, we take people at face value. If someone says La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah and publicly says I am Muslim, then we have to take what they say as is, unless that person engages in a behavior that is accepted in Islam to be an act of kufr or an act of shirk. Even if they say I am Muslim, but they engage, like for example, Jews say I am Jewish, but I don't believe in God. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah.
So if someone says I am Muslim, but I don't believe in God, what are we supposed to do? We're not going to accept that statement. We're going to say, no, actually, sorry to spill the beans, but you are actually Catholic. And that's not a derogatory statement. That's just an honest description of who you are, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, but what if somebody says that they're Muslim, but then they're doing all these different things that kind of go against Islam? So for instance, and this is a question that I feel like is a common one out there, for people who are Sunni or they're Shia and they have like disagreements amongst each other because it's like, oh, but Islam says this, but no, Islam says that. How do you reconcile between the two? Like, a lot of people who are Sunni say that Shias are not Muslim, and a lot of Shias say Sunnis are not Muslim. How do you be okay with one or the other?
I would actually resort back to Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah has in my opinion, is one of the most effective perspectives on this. Ibn Taymiyyah, for example, he did not consider the Shias to be kuffar, by the way. He considered Shias to be maybe they commit bid'ah. That was Ibn Taymiyyah's opinion. But he did put takfir on a group that was called Al-Jahmiyyah. And I don't want to go into extensive conversations. There are no Jahmis that live in this age anymore. It's a group that died. So he would put takfir on the Jahmiyyah, but he would not put takfir on individual members of the group. He would gauge those individual members on their own merit based on what they do and what they say and what they believe, right? So, for example, if you take an individual that goes to the grave and seeks help from a dead person, let's say in some small village in Egypt, there is a Sufi saint that is buried in that village. And that person goes to the Sufi saint, and then he says, "Oh, Sheikh so and so, please, my son is very sick. Please help my son." You're talking to a dead person, and you're asking that dead person to help your son. What do we call this?
It's shirk.
We call this shirk, because this person is attributing divinity or power to a dead person. Okay, and so if someone engages in this behavior, then they are committing an act of shirk, and that is removing them from the faith. Whether this person is Sunni or Shia or Sufi, it doesn't matter. We are judging the behavior, and we're not judging the group. In general, Sunni scholarship is of the agreement that the Zaydis and the Ja'faris of the Shia persuasion are considered Muslim. There's a lot of disagreements about the Ismailis. The Ismailis is a small fringe group. But the majority of Sunni scholarship, the majority of the madhahib, they consider the Ja'faris and the Zaydis to be Muslim, with the Zaydis being way closer to Sunni Islam than the Ja'fari madhab.
So if there are hadith that actually say that Sunnis and Shias and all of them, they're all Muslim, where does this anti-Shia sentiment come from?
It comes from history. So I want us to distinguish between three things, right? There is history, and history obviously comes with politics. There is fiqh, the jurisprudence, and then there is aqidah, which is the creed. right? So there is what the person does in the real world politically, and then there's how the person worships God, and then there is what the person believes. Those are three things, all right? So let's examine this. Can we disagree with each other on history and politics? 100%. We can disagree all the time. If the Sunnis say, Abu Bakr should have been the Khalifa, and the Shia say Ali should have been the Khalifa, we can have a disagreement about this. If the Sunnis say leadership is democratic in the entire community, but the Shia community says no, it has to be the descendants of the Prophet ﷺ, we can disagree about that, right? Because, this doesn't really, if the majority of the Shias believe that the Sahaba, should have encouraged Ali or supported Ali's claim to the Khilafah, but they did not, we can have a conversation about this, right? Now, can we have disagreements on fiqh? All the time. In fact, Sheikh Shaltut, Sheikh al-Azhar, this is in the 1960s, issued a fatwa that ever since has become the official position of Al-Azhar, is that it's legitimate to practice Islam through the Shia madhab. Like the four Sunni madhab plus the Ja'fari madhab, that this is a legitimate way of practicing Islam, right? What about Aqidah? Aqidah, I think, is where the issues are. All right? Aqidah is where we may have very, very severe disagreement. So if someone believes in the lens of history, or history through the lens of the Ja'fari or the Zaydi madhab, we're going to be okay with this. If someone practices fiqh through the Ja'fari perspective, I think we're going to be okay with this. But when it comes to Aqidah, when it comes to what we believe in, that's when we need to check each other. And that's when we need to gauge it on a case-by-case basis. And it's precisely, I think what happens is that what Muslims have become so superficial, and social media plays that role as well. Right. They see like videos of people in the streets of whatever, Saida in Lebanon, where they bring the little kids and they do the self-flogging and they bleed themselves and they bleed the little children, and they're like, oh, astaghfirullah, look at what the Shias are doing. Okay? Whereas it's actually my confirmed knowledge that the majority of Shia scholarship rejects this behavior, right? So it's not, is it enough to put takfir on the Shias because they gather on the streets and they bleed themselves? No, it's not.
But then how would you explain that to somebody who doesn't have that knowledge?
We would just say these are local cultural practices, or maybe we just say that's bid'ah. This is bid'ah. This is not an accepted practice in the faith. But is it enough to remove someone from the faith? The answer is no, right? However, if someone, let's say, of course there is this common statements that we hear, in the Shia community. Sometimes you have these large gatherings of people, and then there's like loudspeakers, and it feels, it has like disco like type of vibe to it, and there's like the lights are red. And they are mourning, the murder of Imam Hussein, and they're engaged in this like chant, Ali, 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 Ali. Okay. As an outsider, I look at this and I have to ask myself. I need to pause and I ask myself: is this some kind of a behavior that is not sanctioned by the scholars and people that engage in this in their own local culture? In which case, I would ask a further question. When you say Ali, what do you mean? Are you saying Ali can come help me today? Or you're doing tawassul to Ali? Or do you think that Ali can help you? Or are you doing the normal tawassul from the Sunnah, which is using the name of a member of Ahlul Bayt in order to seek the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? All of this has to be verified before you make hollow statements that would further divide the ummah. Are there people in the Shia community that we considered kuffar? Absolutely. In fact, there are people in the Shia community that the Shia community will consider to be kuffar. Are there people in the Sunni community that practice acts of shirk and we would consider? Absolutely. So it's not the label. I think we need to gauge the behavior and what the behavior means.
So basically what you're saying is that anybody who says the shahada and believes the shahada, we would consider them Muslim.
And they don't attribute any type of divinity to anyone but Allah subhanahu wa
Right.
ta'ala. Yes.
Okay, so I think that answers that question then.
Mhm.
So Mamdani is not kafir.
He certainly is not, simply because he says I'm Muslim. And quite honestly, I think our Muslim community did celebrate,
Mm-hmm.
and for a good reason. You know, a young man with eloquence, with courage, with tenacity. I honestly only learned that he's Shia very, very late in his campaign. I did not care.
Yeah.
How many of you watch Mahdi Hassan? Do we enjoy his insights or not? Does it matter that he's Shia? Doesn't matter to us. We have to be fair and we have to be honest. And this is something else, by the way, that I wanted to talk about is that somehow I think when Muslims are in the public sphere, we start treating them like they are a representation of Islam.
Yeah.
Are they? Or should they? They're not a representation of Islam. They only represent themselves. Zahra Mamdani is the mayor of New York who happens to be Muslim. That's it. Hassan Minhaj is a comedian who happens to be Muslim. Muhammad Amir is a comedian who happens to be Muslim, right? Do we judge Islam through their actions? So why do we try to undermine them? Ilhan Omar, I disagree with half of her politics. I disagree with half of her positions. But why do I disagree with half of his choices, right? You in particular. Right? I can see someone here that comes to Jum'ah and I know what they do. I know that they go to clubs and I know that they have a girlfriend. I disagree with their choices as well. But do I embrace them as my brother or sister or not?
Of course.
Because I don't see them as an authority that represents Islam. Okay? If there's an imam that goes out there in his capacity as the imam and says things against Islam, then I'd be very troubled because, hey, you're supposed to represent, the teachings of the deen. But Hassan Minhaj certainly doesn't represent Islam. He's Muslim, but he doesn't represent Islam. Ilhan Omar does not represent. Oh, Rashida Tlaib, she's not even hijabi. Okay. There are other women out here that are not hijabi. That should not be your focus. Your focus should be on her politics. She's an elected official. If you're conservative, maybe you shouldn't be voting for Rashida Tlaib, right?
How do we balance that then? A lot of times when we have Muslim representation, we get excited and then they do something that kind of goes against what we believe a Muslim should be or do.
And then we get disappointed.
And then we get disappointed.
Yeah, exactly. I've said this before and I think people get upset. You should not vote for someone just because they're Muslim. If I'm being honest. You shouldn't just vote for them just because they're Muslim. No, that's not enough. Voting is an amana, it's a responsibility, and therefore you should treat that responsibility with care, and you have to be very, very, very careful who you vote for. Now, everything else being equal, if you have two candidates and they are almost identical in every aspect, but one of them is Muslim, then I'll vote for the Muslim. Does that make sense?
Yeah, one of the things that I think that came out of this entire, topic of this month is the idea that we're very quick to judge. And I think that showed on social media, and then I think that also it reflected in the topic that we had, right? I mean, we were talking literally about how Mamdani is being judged because of his belief, whether he's Muslim or not Muslim, what it means, how can we reconcile the fact that he's Shia and not Sunni, how can we support him? All of this comes down to judgment and being judgmental of people based on what we think of them. Is there something that you can talk to the youth about? I mean, how do we go about our day-to-day lives? We look at people. I mean, it's so easy to say, don't judge a book by its cover. It's such a common cliche statement. But I think as Muslims, we have to internalize that statement a lot more. Is there something you can talk to the youth about that?
I mean, we live in exceptional times because Gaza was center stage, I think, in the last few years. And so anyone that supports the right of the people of Gaza to live automatically earned our support. And anyone that stood against the machine of Zionism automatically earned our support, and for good reason, okay? So in these exceptional times, I am okay if we celebrate the win of Zohran Mamdani as a Muslim because he's opposed to Zionism. Or any local, politicians, May Vang, she's running for Congress, trying to unseat Congresswoman Matsui. on this particular ticket, and I'm going to be very, very happy if Matsui loses the elections as the incumbent. Is that the only yardstick to judge politicians moving forward? I don't think so. I think we need to be a little bit more nuanced and a little bit more complex in the way we choose. And I think, again, we need to take what people say to us at face value unless
Seen otherwise.
seen otherwise.
Yeah. So how can we move forward from all of this? What do you recommend are the next steps for us based on everything, the social media thing, and then also with all the conversation about Mamdani being Muslim or not Muslim? How do we move forward? What can we learn from this, and what can we do to better ourselves?
I would say, number one, spend a little bit less time on social media. Remove Instagram from your phones and check it maybe on your computers, right? Wallahi, the world is you're not gonna miss anything, right? That's number one. So you will be a little bit less reactionary if you're spending less time on social media. Number two, spend more time at your masjid. Spend more time attending programs like this. Spend more time talking to the imam. Spend more time deriving knowledge from its natural sources, and social media is not one of those natural sources. Number three, I think Sunnis and Shias both, they need to start being a little bit nuanced in the way they talk about one another. Okay? Do I take issue with the fact that some Shias attack the mothers of the believers? It tears me apart. Do I take issue that some Shias attack blanket condemnation of the Sahaba? It tears me apart. Do I take issue that, there are some Shias, minority, but some Shias who attack the Quran and the veracity of the Quran? Tears me apart. But do I use that to issue a blanket condemnation against the Shia community? That would be wrong in every aspect, right? I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it with, carefully. Sometimes I feel that there are more Shias that come to Tarbiyah than those who go to one of those small local Shia mosques. Why? Because they were embraced by their brothers and sisters. And why is it that rifts happen, right, between communities? Why do we move apart from each other? Historically speaking?
Assumptions or power.
Because we don't talk. When we have dialogues with each other, we realize that there's a lot more in common between us. And, the Shias realize that, Ahlul Sunnah, they have a tremendous amount of love for the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How often did I mention Ahlul Bayt in the khutbah, and how often I've stood there on that pulpit and I've explicitly said, if I go back in time and I stand there between Ali and Muawiyah, and I'd be given a choice who I'm going to be fighting for, what did I say? I said that I'll be fighting for who? I said I'll be fighting for Ali. Explicitly. I don't care if some people get upset. Oh, this is a conflict of the past. Why are you talking about it now? Well, I'm talking about it now because it's still hurting our community to this day. I'm not going to ignore it, right? And so if we have this dialogue with each other, I heard Shia imams explicitly say, it's haram to curse the mothers of the believers. It's haram to curse the Sahaba. I've heard it myself, right, in person. So some Sunni person will turn around and say, well, it's taqiyya, they say something, but they mean something else. Yeah, we can keep going in these endless loops if you want. And we can keep going endlessly accusing each other of wrongdoing or bad intentions. And guess what? We undermine our own ummah, and the enemy is at the door. The enemy wants us to turn against each other. I'm not going to let that happen, at least not in my community over here. When I say something, when I hear something, for example, and I know that this is not representative of Shia thought in general, but it does exist in Shia, in some circles of Shia thought, is that the imams have a higher station before God than the prophets and the messengers. This stuff definitely troubles me, and for a good reason, okay? And I personally think if I'm standing in front of someone and that person tells me in my face that the imams are of a higher station than the prophets and the messengers, then I will consider that that person has, committed a grave, grave, grave sin. But I'm never going to use that to make opinions about an entire group of people. And so we need to have more dialogue about this. We need to spend less time on social media. We need to pay less attention to the hyperbolic actions. You see something horrific on TikTok that represents one community, just, the more you spend time on those things, by the way, the more they show up in your feed. And then you start thinking that this is how the entire world is.
Yeah, I think it's also a lack of education, right? I think for our community, especially the youth, like not knowing, not understanding what the Shia community, who the Shia community is. I mean, there's so many community members that come to Tarbiyah, like you said, who don't even realize that they're Shia. They're
Right.
literally just like us, right? But when you talk about it, all of a sudden the Shia are like them and us, and there's a huge difference, and there's a rift, and there's this whole lack of understanding. And so I think
I gotta say though, like, all these people that have attacked us on social media, I wish that they managed to make it to the event tonight
yeah, I agree.
and be with us and ask questions. Why is it so easy for us to fire from the hip, rapid fire on social media, but we can't come to the masjid and actually have an honest conversation with one another face to face? You look me in the eye and you call me names, sitting across the carpet from me, instead of hiding behind the screen on Instagram. I would love to see you sit here. Oh, you are this and that. Look me straight in the eye and say that in my face. I would have had more respect for you. But then again, it's the nature of the times.
Yeah, I think that's a common issue, right? Keyboard warriors. Okay, so I think we can open it up to Q&A.
This is extremely sweet,
But it's sheer chai, it's the best chai in the day.
but it's still very sweet.
The Afghans have really outdone themselves today. You want green tea?
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Maybe get more.
I'll take some questions, you guys, and please keep the spirit of this event in mind when you ask questions. If you're going to ask questions that will further cause divisions, then maybe keep your peace and talk to me privately after the event.
Brother
Yes.
has a question.
I just have a question as we were talking about like tech theory and stuff like that. Obviously, like Zohar Madani is a Muslim, but maybe some of his beliefs are kind of questionable in regards to what is the normative belief in Islam. It makes me think like what is the line, or how thick is the line between like a hypocrite and then like a kafir, right? Like how do you differentiate between the two?
Well, you can't, because hypocrite is someone that hides their true colors, but they profess Islam outwardly. You cannot verify that. Even at the Prophet's time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the munafiqeen were buried in Muslim graves, and so there is absolutely no way that we can call anyone a hypocrite. We can't. I mean, sometimes we call people hypocrite rhetorically. He's such a hypocrite. But we don't really mean that they are like hypocrite in their creed, that they are hiding their kufr and they're professing their Islam. Kufr, on the other hand, is very obvious. Someone tells you, I'm not Muslim. Or someone says, I am Muslim, but they blatantly commit acts of shirk publicly. Then I'll be able to say, no, I'm sorry to say it, but you're actually not Muslim because of 1, 2, 3. If someone says, there is a prophet that came after the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that person is kafir in my book, period. I don't care if you call yourself Muslim. The Ahmadis, I think, would be a great example of that. And so that is, I think, what I would have to say.
Yes. What if someone says that there is no prophet after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but there are people that came after the Prophet that were better than prophets and had more authority than them?
I just commented on this earlier. I just said, like, if someone told me that the Imams are of a higher station than the prophets and the messengers, and they continue to receive wahy today from God, I would consider that to be an act of shirk.
You want to be Muslim?
Sorry?
That wouldn't be Islam.
That wouldn't be what?
Islam.
He said they wouldn't be Muslim then?
It's an act of shirk. What do you call it? Mushrik. But the thing is, if you investigate or survey the Shia community, they will have a variety of opinions about this. And that's the thing, I try to be nuanced because I have worked with people from the Shia community very closely in the past, and they don't espouse those views. On the other hand, I have seen firsthand people that espouse those views and more. And so, you know, if someone does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then we're able to say that that person is removed from the fold of Islam.
I have a small follow-up question. Do you, when like studying, I guess, not just Shia, but any sect or like their perspective, should you go by them as a, what do you call it, at least when studying the group, so not studying individuals, when studying a group, should you go by their texts or by how majority of the people practice it?
Well, like I said, I follow Ibn Taymiyyah's, you know, footsteps here. You know, he would literally categorically say that Jahmiyyah are kuffar, but he would never put takfir on the individual members of the Jahmiyyah group. He would actually, like, you know, what do you call it, iqamatul hujjah, like he would have to debate them for 3 days in order to verify their actual views, and then he would say, yeah, this person is kafir based on what I heard from. In the views of Ibn Taymiyyah. Say again?
Didn't he also say the Shia are Jahmiyyah?
The aqidah of most of the Ja'faris is actually Mu'tazili aqidah.
Which you consider Jahmiyyah as well?
Well, you know, it's Mu'tazili. And Ahlul Sunnah don't consider the Mu'tazilis to be kuffar. They don't consider them to be from Ahlul Qibla, but they don't consider them to be kuffar either. Unless you're Hanbali. Yeah, well, Ibn Taymiyyah was ostracized by the Hanbalis themselves. He deviated from the Hanbalis, yes.
I know you know this. Do Shias believe in a different Quran or the same Quran?
I think that 99% of the Shias believe in the same Quran. The same Quran that they recite in Tehran is the one that they recite in Mecca. But I think there is a very, very, very small fringe group within the Shia community that may say, you know, parts of the Quran were, you know, were removed or lost or whatever. I've read that before. But I think that the Shia community themselves does not accept that. But it's used in a hyperbolic way. It's used to cast further aspersions on the Shias.
Most Shia today don't believe that. It's like
What's that?
It's a dead belief. It used to exist.
It used to exist.
It used to be really large, but it's
Yeah.
dead. Today nobody really believes that.
Yeah.
It's an individual belief. It's not an authentic scholarly belief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Sisters, any questions? Yes.
So I know you guys had posted it last week, but with all the controversy and the backlash that it had started, why did it take you guys so long to take it down?
We didn't take it.
You guys didn't take it down?
No, we took it down on Friday. So, we serve a community of thousands.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people, all kinds of persuasions that come here. And if we allow ourselves to bend over because there's some people that don't like something we said, it's going to be open season on TV. And we can't do that. When we issued that statement back then and we asked the rhetorical question, we felt that we did the right thing. And 1 week later, that belief has not changed. I did not change my mind. And if I go back, I would probably, you know, I did not select the title. But if I go back and the team asks me, hey, by the way, we're going to select this title, I would say, guys, a lot of people are going to get upset because of this. Let's just avoid the distraction and select a simpler title. But I don't think that the title was wrong.
Okay.
And again, you know, we have to make sure that we stand our ground and we take a stance on something. The Zionists will attack us on the things that we say. The Islamophobes will attack us. The Salafis will attack us. The Sufis will attack us. We're not just going to change something because of political pressure. We're going to change it if we feel that it is wrong, and we're going to own our mistake, and we're going to apologize publicly and say that was out of line. This was not one of them.
But it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
No, it is
You agree?
precisely what I say.
Right, but the way the flyer was made, I mean, the moment I read it, it was like, no, this is, I didn't even read the comments. I mean, you're saying there were comments, and I did read one of the comments that I did not like. But the way it was said, it came really offensive. why would you even ask the way it was asked? It was like, it was wrong. It came out wrong. Maybe because, maybe because you guys worked it out. You know, it's every picture you can see from this angle, and because we are seeing it, but somebody who's standing here is looking at it differently. So the title came out wrong because everybody outside the picture are looking at it differently. And if many people are being offended, then something was wrong with it, and that's why it was taken down. Because it was creating kind of a shur, you know?
Kind of a what?
The shur, the way people were, even the way people were, the first few comments that I read, and I closed it after that because it was just like too much for me. It was not nice, you know?
What was not nice? The comments or the title?
The comments.
Mhm.
The title, I totally disagreed with it.
Yeah.
Because it was like it was like creating in my head. I was like, why would you say something like this for a Muslim, right? Even if it's the thought behind it was fine. It was you guys were trying to address what was being said in social media, right? But why would you make the flyer like that? That would cause something like that. So the thought behind was okay, but the way it was said was not okay. So if I say something that doesn't sound right and it's offending somebody, then I should take the responsibility. You know what? Maybe I made a mistake.
So here's the thing, sister. I appreciate your perspective, and honestly, I don't want to argue over this. I think it's all said and done. It's in the past now. We've definitely learned lessons from this, that it's better to be careful than to be creative. But I would still say everyone is bound to say something that might offend someone else. I might be offended with what you just said right now.
Fine.
Does that make it wrong?
It's not that a
Like
person
if we survey the audience and 15 people said, I was offended by what Sister Hina said,
right. And
does that mean that your feedback is wrong?
But then I would, if somebody's coming up to me and saying, hey, you know what, this has offended me, I would have a conversation. If I feel like I've hurt somebody's feeling, I would apologize. I never feel like I cannot. My point is, it's like me, if I'm having a conversation with a sister and she's getting offended, it's different. If tarbiyah is not a person, tarbiyah is something huge, right? It's a place where it's a spiritual place. So if this place says something and somebody is being offended, I mean, I was part of the community, so I was able to reach out very quickly. I got response and everything, alhamdulillah. But people who are outside and they're trying to be connected to Islam or to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is something that will push them away. You know what I'm saying? I know how tarbiyah, I mean, I've been with tarbiyah for so long, but so I was like, there has to be, because the way I said it, it was like, whatever the intention was, could be right, but the way it's said was not right. I was offended by the title, right? And no, I mean, probably nothing needs to be said more, but the point is, my point is, if somebody makes a mistake, sure, you cannot take the beating, and you cannot just listen to somebody, oh, I'm offended, so take the fly down. But if many people are being offended, then maybe I should take the responsibility that, you know what, made a mistake.
I appreciate that, sister. Yes.
I appreciate, one of the things I really appreciate about Tarbiyah, I feel like, is it really, Tarbiyah likes to have such a balance. We are a very inclusive community, but we also make sure to tackle questions that many other communities refuse to tackle, right? And I think that tackling a question, when we whether they're easy questions or hard questions, it enables us to learn so much that I didn't consider or learn before. And I think that it's important that one of the things that make Islamic scholarship, apart from other religions, so amazing is the scholars would ask sometimes the most wild question they would assume to be like a known fact. Yet we'd ask this question. Sometimes many scholars would be imprisoned, they'd receive backlash, they'd be punished for the kind of questions they ask. But it's what's advanced, the richness of Islam is questions. And Allah Ta'ala always tells us that we should ask questions. And had the scholars of Islam shied away, I feel like, from so many of the tough questions, and even went to jail for some of these questions, because everybody found it offensive, and everyone wanted them to be jailed, we wouldn't have been able to have such a rich tradition to learn from, to take knowledge from. These questions aren't meant to I feel like, I think one of the things I like about tarbiyah is they'll tackle questions even if they know that it's hard, and they won't just shy away from it. Well, it's push people away, but at the same time answer these questions in a way that makes everyone feel included, and I really like that.
Jazakallah khair. I think that there is definitely a disagreement in our community about the best approach to these matters. I think take Sister Hina for example as a case study here. She saw something on social media that she didn't like, so she emailed us directly, and she said, "Guys, this just doesn't look right. It needs to be changed, and if not changed, those are her words. If not changed, then it could be avoided in the future." Isn't that what you said? So she understands that there is some nuance. I don't understand the thought process behind this title. Probably a bunch of people were involved. It looks offensive to me, but I also have to respect, those who issued the title. If you guys can take it down right now, it'd be nice. But if you couldn't, then maybe in the future, let's tone it down a bit. I respect that. I am perfectly okay with that. But had Sister Hina got upset with the title and then she went on social media and she started shaming tarbiyah, I think that's when it starts hurting. That's when it really becomes disappointing. That's all. So Jazakallah khair for keeping it cordial. Yes.
And that's because I think Sister Hina, she is not immature, and she's responsible, I think.
Can you come say that out loud in the microphone?
So I think that's the approach that she took.
No, of course. I agree. That's precisely why she acted the way that she did. Jazakallah khair. Yes.
So there's a little bit of a kind of a comment. And I remember when I was sitting with Imam Kamran, we were in the halaqah. One of the guys were asking if he says that he's Muslim, right? Then he supports in his proposed legislation and stuff like that what he's going to change, what he's going to instate, and some of those things go against the values of Islam. Does that then do the whole he's kafir and this and that? And Imam Kamran shared the wisdom here, and wanted to get your thoughts on it as well. That unless he was a spiritual guide and a spiritual leader, and he says, as a representation of my job and as I study in the Quran, I think that we should do this, then you can hold him accountable to the fact that Islam says this, and he's using Islam as a kind of like a stone to be laying foundation. But if he doesn't do that, and he happens to be Muslim and he's happening to do this, those two things are separate.
I agree with that 100%. And if a politician, let's say, if a politician says, I will vote for gay marriage because we're a minority, and if we restrict the practices of one minority, that will restrict the practice of us as a minority as well. That's a pragmatic approach that I disagree with in principle, but I don't think that statement removes him from the faith. It's just someone who has bad judgment. That's all I'm going to say. And then at the end of the day, I'll decide, should I vote for this guy or not vote for this guy? A lot of Muslim elected officials are very liberal, and they espouse very liberal views on extreme left progressive views that I disagree with most. But do I remove, like when Ilhan Omar shows up at the Pride protest, does that mean she's kafir? I don't think so.
So we can't apply that to Ramadani when he goes to the Pride parade.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a little off question. This is a little more.
What's an off question?
It's more unique, and I was curious, and I wanted to understand more. So, obviously, when studying it more academically, right? Because I'm someone that likes the books and stuff like that, right? And obviously, these don't apply to Shias nowadays, but there's many Shia scholars that talk about the Quran, was changed, like Muhammad Baqir al-Najisi in his book Manazir al-Qul, Tafsir al-Burhan, Bayatullah Hussein.
Like hundreds of years ago.
And you could go to even the main, Shia scholars, the ones that wrote Al-Kafi, Muhammad Yaqub al-Kulaini, and also Shatab, it talks about how you believe the Quran had things added, had things taken out, and stuff like that. But Shias today, almost many of them don't even know these beliefs even existed, right? Because no one goes that deep into the author of Al-Kafi or the author of Al-Istibsar.
And they follow the marji'iyat of
they
today.
Follow the marji', which is more like an usuli thought that kind of became dominant in the 17th century. So how do you critique those beliefs without Shias today feeling that you're telling them, oh, they don't believe in the Quran, when, you know, you talk about Al-Majlisi or, you know, the author of Al-Kafi Al-Khulaini or his teacher Ali Ibrahim Al-Qummi and all these people?
It depends on the platform on which you are critiquing it. Are you critiquing this in some academic circle, in a master's dissertation? Or are you critiquing this on social media? If you do this in an academic circle where there's students of knowledge that are interested in the subject matter, then that's perfectly okay. You know, you're being academically honest. But if you put this on social media, and then it looks like incitement. It looks like you're trying to make the modern day Shia community look like some of them at least reject the authenticity of the Quran, and that can be harmful. So depends on I think the platform, you know, does matter. And you don't want to be talking to thousands of people with very, very little knowledge and giving them something that would just add gasoline to the fire.
And a small follow-up question is, like, when doing da'wah, right? So I know, like, I like to explain Islam to people, right? And I want to, like, explain to them why I agree with one or why I don't agree with the other and stuff like that. Sometimes you do have to go into, you know, the history, like, without, like, if I'm putting it blunt, like, the majority of the early Muqaddimun, besides Saduq, I think the author of Malayat al-Faqih, they pretty much all believe the Quran was changed, and they wrote, you know, a lot of books even explaining why, and things that were changed, things that were added, and the narrations for the Imams that they used to support it. But if I want to explain, like, why I disagree with this, or why I think this kind of undermines credibility, so let's say different, it could be any topic. How do I explain this? Like,
What kind of poor soul you're making da'wah to that you're going to be telling him all this?
There's somebody who's a Shia asking why I don't agree with
Oh, you're trying to bring someone who's Shia to bring them
many of my
to...
friends who were Shia that I gave da'wah, alhamdulillah, or like, they were ex-Shia. A lot of my friends were actually, they taught me a lot of these
So
things.
how about this? Why don't we work on the Christians and the Jews first and bring them to Islam, and then when we're done, we're going to start converting the Jafaris.
But no, we shouldn't do all of the same. Like, I do all of it. Like, I've done many Christians, I've done da'wah to, many atheists, I think Hindu, every kind of religion I believe, you know, obviously I do. And I include the Shia in the people that have, like, you know, done down and explained certain things that I disagree with or why I hold the view.
Well, I mean, still, that's a private conversation with someone who is willing to listen. I think, you know, you're welcome to talk to them about whatever you want, as long as they're able to tolerate what you're
But when
saying.
it transforms to the online space, it's like my curiosity.
Don't let it transform to the online space.
But I want to learn genuinely.
Ridwan, stay off social media.
I want to learn genuinely.
Especially you. Yes.
Just comment to him, that's not an authentic Shia belief. I think you've heard that from ignorant Shia or ignorant Sunnis.
I've read the books themselves.
Where did you get it from?
Fatwa Fatwa by the Tahrir Fatwa al-Izzat has a whole book explaining Tahrir from Sheikh Mirza al-Islam. His name.
Remember? I think we'll leave this debate for later.
Any questions, you guys? Yes, Sister Ray. Guys, hold on.
As Muslims, obviously in America, a lot of candidates are not both going to hold values that we as Muslims don't agree with. Just going to use like the past presidential election as an example. Both candidates hold values or just attributes that we as Muslims would heavily disagree with. How would we go about that when all options are like going to promote stuff we don't agree with?
Then find the candidate that you agree with, even if the likelihood of their win is very, very low. And I think that's why many of us voted neither Democrat nor Republican in the last elections, and you know, many of us voted Green, and you know, some of the other independent candidates. I think that's okay. It's fine. I think, you know, Butch Ware put it very, very effectively when he said that the establishment has convinced us that it's only them that they can win, and anybody else is going to fail. So we're scared of voting for anyone else. But once we break away from that fear, the likelihood of someone else winning is going to be very, very high. So it's just like we're hurting ourselves. This is a self-inflicted injury when we accept, you know, that kind of state. Yes.
And then,
Oh, sorry.
Last question.
I guess for you, like, do you kind of see like, let's say movements primarily led by like Islam, but Muslims at the beginning, let's say like the pro-Palestine or the anti-Zionist movement, kind of being co-opted by the wrong forces, and how do we discern that? Like, for example, Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? She's now anti-Zionist, but it's
Tucker Carlson.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you really want to vote for her as a Muslim? And so, but I feel like a lot of these movements, they can be co-opted by people who want our votes, but who don't actually have our best interest in mind. So how do we kind of discern that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel like ultimately we need to start producing our own candidates from our own community. People that were raised up in the masajid, people that have the right set of values that we can trust across the board. We will never agree with everything that they stand for, but at least name one politician with whom you're able to say, I agree with 75% of their positions. Not even 10%. Not even 10%.
Muslims, if we run, how do we adopt policies? Muslims, obviously, when we run, we're going to run in America, which is predominantly not Muslim, right? Obviously. So let's say I want to run for office. I have to then, how do I not? So you're gonna, like, the people are gonna ask us certain policies, right? This community is gonna come, that community is gonna come, and they're going to have, obviously, they're going to want things that are un-Islamic. If I say everything Islamic, never gonna win, for sure.
No, not necessarily true. I think we are made to believe that too. We are made to believe that we have to bend over backwards and say the things that they want us to say in order to win, otherwise we can't win. I think what Trump has shown us, paradoxically, is that when you are 100% honest and blunt about all of your faith and all of your beliefs, you will actually gain a lot of support. In New York, perhaps the city in America with the highest concentration of Jewish residents, the most Zionist city in America, and you have an anti-Zionist Muslim who wins the elections because he spoke the truth about who he is. I actually think that we need to start. Lose the first round, lose the second round, lose the third round, keep building up the campaign, keep changing people in their hearts. What does it take to win campaigns? 70% of the population? No. 10% of those who are registered to vote. Focus on that. How many people in Placer County is that? 10,000 people? Probably a lot less.
So
we're going to make the adhan, inshallah. We're going to pray 5 minutes after the adhan, so if you need to make a wudu.
All right, I prayed Isha earlier, so I'll let you guys pray. Inshallah, jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
So just